Welcome to the Really Know Your Customer podcast with your hosts, Betsy Westhafer and Tony Bodo. Join Betsy and Tony as they dive in with highly successful C-suite leaders who have grown successful organizations by creating a laser focus on listening to their customers and building deep customer relationships. Now, it's time to join Betsy and Tony for the Really Know Your Customer show.
Welcome to the Really Know Your Customer podcast. I'm Tony Bodo, CEO of Tony Bodo International and the co-author of the best-selling book, Profitability.
And I'm Betsy Westhafer. I am the CEO of the Congruity Group and also the co-author of the best-selling book, Profitability.
So we have an amazing guest today, Peter Voss. He's the founder and CEO and chief scientist. He's got a lot of titles there of AIGO. That's AIGO.ai. Based in Los Angeles, California. And the short version of it is that he's worked in artificial intelligence for 20 years now, and he has created a chatbot with a brain. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go into some pretty deep stuff. And I warn you at the outset, I totally geek out in this episode because I am I think I fell off the bandwagon in this one here, but I'm a recovering data junkie.
Let's be real, Tony, you have not recovered.
I have not at all.
You are, and I actually don't even see that happening. But yeah, it was great interview, but it's also not just a technical interview. It's about the impact of what AI can do for the world. It's about how companies can protect their brands by really focusing rather on the human experience versus just quote unquote customer experience. It's about so much more than the technology. But if you have an interest in the technology, this will also appeal to you broadly. So without further ado, let's talk to Peter Voss from AIGO. So Peter, let's jump right in. Again, thank you for being here. We're so excited to have this conversation with you. Peter, can you give us, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better, as we already have had a chance to, give us your background, your career path that led you to where you are today?
Yes, certainly. So I started out as an electronics engineer. Started my own company. Then I fell in love with software and my company turned into a software company. And that was very exciting. It was basically being able to just create, by just writing code, being able to create applications. So I designed a fairly comprehensive ERP system for medium-sized businesses, built my company around that, and we were quite successful. We went from the garage to 400 people and did an IPO. So that was super exciting. But it's really when I exited that company and I had, some time available to think, what is the big problem that I want to work on? And really what struck me is how stupid software is, and I'm saying that I was very proud of my own software, but if the programmer didn't think of something, it would just crash or give an error message or something, didn't have any common sense. So I really wanted to understand what is intelligence and how can we make software more intelligent. So embarked on a 5-year research journey to really deeply understand what intelligence is, starting with philosophy, epistemology, theory of knowledge, what is reality? How do we know anything? And cognitive psychology, how do children learn? What do IQ tests measure? How does our intelligence differ from animal intelligence? All of those kinds of questions to really understand intelligence. And of course, to look at what had been done in the field of AI. So the culmination of that was that I came up with a design for an intelligence engine, a software engine that can learn and reason more like humans do. And in 2001, I then coined the term artificial general intelligence together with 2 other people. And we wrote a book on the topic. And that's really to bring AI back to the original dream. When the term AI was coined 60 plus years ago, it was about building thinking machines that can think and learn and reason the way humans do. But that turned out to be really, really difficult. So the field of AI has really been one of pursuing just one problem at a time, or narrow AI. And so we coined the term artificial general intelligence, AGI, to recapture that original ambition of AI. And that's what I've been working on since 2001 in various companies, splitting my time between R&D development and actually commercializing the technology. And so with my current company, AIGO.ai, this is now the second generation of commercialization of the technology. We're basically creating intelligent conversational AI, or how we like to call it, a chatbot with a brain.
So, Peter, can you give us an example of exactly how this works for your customers? And then we want to dive more into how it solves problems for your customers and why this is different, and just kind of take us down the path of why this is impactful for your customers.
Right. So we are currently focusing on working with large enterprise companies, and pretty much every large company we talk to either have chatbots or have tried to implement chatbots. And universally, they are unhappy with the results, both from a customer experience point of view and from a cost-saving point of view. And the simple reason for that is that the current chatbots that are out there have no brain, they have no intelligence. And to be specific about that is, they don't remember what you said 2 sentences ago. Never mind what you said in the previous conversation you've had. They really don't have any deep understanding of what you're saying. They just extract keywords and key patterns, and then they kind of respond to that. So it's sort of a stimulus response. You say something, blah, 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 weather. Oh, you probably want the weather report, but then you could also say, I hate Uber, don't ever give me Uber again. Oh, Uber, okay, here's the Uber app, So they don't have deep understanding, they don't have memory, they don't have the ability to reason, or they don't have common sense. So those are very severe limitations. I mean, if you had a human personal assistant that didn't remember what you said 2 sentences ago, or just picked up on keywords, that wouldn't be very useful. So that's the frustration that, large companies have with trying to implement chatbots, and quite a few of them have just given up on it.
It's really the definition of knowing your customer, right? From a technology standpoint, applying what we talk about on this show, really knowing your customers. I'm curious about how, as you're running this company, how do you instill that culture of customer centricity within your organization so that it flows out to your customers as well?
Well, I think it's often said that, the company culture comes from the top. And I've always been that way. To me, it's producing a quality product has always been my main motivation. And while maybe some investors don't like to hear that, but that's what drives me more than the profitability. I believe that the quality product comes first, and to me, and then the profitability happens as a secondary thing. So one of the things, for example, we have a VP of customer delight. So that's kind of how we think about it. And we really obsess about doing that. Now, of course, our technology, as advanced as it is not at human level. So, you have to obviously, say, well, what is actually possible? So it's a fine balancing act to say, what do you want to automate? What can you automate successfully, and what can't you automate successfully? And obviously also very importantly is, how can you integrate? How can you hand over from, an artificial intelligence, from an intelligent chatbot? How can you hand off elegantly to a live agent where that's necessary? So it's integrating the system deeply into the customer's ecosystem, both in terms of the back end, knowing as much as possible about the customer and being able to use that, and then being able to integrate that with other channels, whether they existing FAQs or help channels or whatever.
I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into this idea of the chatbot with a brain, because my experience, I think back in 2007, I started working with text mining platforms to look at the feedback that was coming through surveys and emails and those types of correspondence. And, the real challenge that I found with those systems, and I apologize to the audience if I get a little too technical here, but I think it's an important piece. Most people don't understand that in language, there's the content words, which makes up like 98, 99%. And it's like the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, descriptions. And then there's the functional words, which are like the personal pronouns, the articles, the conjunctions, the things that make the sentence work together. And the biggest challenge in a lot of these mining platforms that then eventually have moved into AI is being able to understand and value those functional words, so that, as you said, if I just pick out Uber and weather and those key content words, I may have no real understanding of the context of the sentence. So how does general intelligence, how does your chatbot potentially look at the whole context of the sentence, the meaning of the sentence, not just those key words?
Right. So there are a couple of things involved. One of them is deep parsing, so that you actually don't just do pattern matching. I mean, the way other chatbots work, chatbots without a brain, is basically they have just a categorizer, which is a large statistical analyzer that you train with lots of example words, and then it takes the input and it simply says, which of those possible outputs does this relate to? So it's a categorizer. It can only fit, one of maybe a few dozen or a few hundred slots, or in the case of Alexa or Siri, it might even be a few thousand different slots. But basically, whatever the input is will always trigger that one intent. There's no analysis of the actual sentence, the input sentence. It's just, statistically, this sentence, these words, it's not even a sentence, it's just these words, statistically are most likely to correlate with, intent number 47 or whatever it might be. So what we do is we actually analyze the sentence and do a complete a deep parse of it, get all of the clauses, the sub-clauses, how are they related, picking up negations, resolving pronouns and other indirect references that you have. And even it's not good enough just doing a parse by itself. You also have to do it in the context of the conversation, because to resolve, pronouns or indirect references like that, they often refer to things that were said, one or two or three sentences ago. And also taking the context into account. What are you actually trying to do at the moment? Are you trying to place an order? Are you talking about an existing order? Or if we're talking about, say, troubleshooting a modem, have you already tried to reboot your system 3 times? Well, then whatever you're saying might have a very different meaning or different implication. So it's really the deep parse of deeply analyzing the sentence within the context of the conversation is really necessary for us to then figure out, well, what should you actually be doing now? What is the next step that you should do?
It's interesting. Two things come to mind as I listen to you say that. The first one is an experience I had over the past week with my cable provider, who will remain nameless. That very experience of I had rebooted my modem, I'd gone through all the troubleshooting, and I got to the end, and they said, "How satisfied are you?" And I wasn't very satisfied because it didn't solve the problem, and that it's basically just put me back into the same loop again to start the whole process over. And so. Not very satisfying. But the other thing that really, I love this idea of the conversation, and really want to touch on that for a second, because it's been my dream since 2007, looking at this feedback of customers. One survey comes in or an email comes in, and none of these tools really took the whole conversation in mind. And so we built processes to manually we would use the system to tag and then we would feed it back into the system again with those additional contexts tagged, if you will. And we would be able to look at across time. So we actually, and I think this is kind of an interesting place that I'd like to explore. We could look at conversations over the course of 6 months or a year with specific groups of customers that had behaved. Maybe they canceled their product or service. And we would look back, what did they say over the last 6 months, and start weaving those conversations together.
Right.
How would your platform, do something like that to really give this intelligence, either to an analyst or more likely to a customer service agent, so they can do the right thing at the right time?
Yeah. So a couple of things here that, of course, the big companies all have a lot of data, have a lot of computing power. So for them, it's all kind of creating buckets of, what is your profile? Sort of what bucket do you fit into? Whereas ultimately, you really want to have hyper-personalization at the individual level. You want, while statistics may be important to make, general business decisions, from a customer interaction point of view, you really don't want to put a customer into a bucket and say, that's the profile and that's how I should treat them. Ideally, you should say, this particular customer, has this particular history, his modem is in the kitchen and it's his model, and he's called 3 times and was replaced a month ago, or whatever the case may be. Or, you have 2 dogs and a cat and, 2 young children, and you live in Oregon or whatever, and something quite unique. So the way we handle that is the brain that manages the conversation actually consists of, you could think of it of 3 layers. The core layer is the intelligence that's available, that's general intelligence. That's sort of, that knows about people, places, how to start a conversation, the sort of general knowledge on how to hold a conversation. Then the second layer is the knowledge that is embedded, that is trained for the particular company and application that you're doing. So, if it's about modems and what are the different products, what are the different names, what are the rules about them, which are obsolete, which are new, whatever you might know about them. And then the outer layer, that's unique to every single customer. So, that remembers your conversations that you've had before. It also, via APIs, will have information that the backend system might have, that information from other interaction channels or whatever might be in the backend. So that is how we can provide hyper-personalization at scale, that, really every individual user essentially has their own AIGO, their own brain. But to get back to the question asked, how can ServiceNow use it? We can, of course, now extract, even though each user has their own brain, their own unique brain, of course, we can extract information, across all of the different conversations that have been had, and then come up with, where are smooth conversations happening? Where do the conversations get stuck? When do you need to transfer to an agent, or when do people hang up, or whatever the case may be, or when do you need to retry? And then you can basically, add to the knowledge base that you have, to the ontology and to the skills that the system has to handle those. Or if they should be handled by a live agent, then to recognize it and hand over. And the handover to the agent will be with a summary of whatever has happened already in the conversation, because that's one of the absolutely most frustrating things in big business. You call in, they need to transfer to another department, and you start from scratch, your authorization, validation, your history. And well, we all know that, especially dealing with banks,
Peter, that sparks a thought. My sister and I have this thing where, if we've had a bad experience with customer service, tech support, whatever it might be, we end up calling each other to talk us off the ledge. Like, I'm a nice person, but this bad experience turns me into a really upset, frustrated human. And obviously that's just horrible for a brand. for people to engage with a customer or with a company that you're giving money to and then end up feeling so horrible about the brand. So I'm interested in, obviously the market is huge for what you do, because I don't think there's a single person on the planet that has not had either a really great experience or a really horrible experience, but either way they remember it, right? So I'm interested in your thoughts on how that impacts brands and how your clients talk to you about that piece of why what you do is so important.
Having I mean, there are two elements to it that our customers are interested in, corporations are interested in. Is the one is to give a great, have their customers have a great experience. That's important. And often they come to us and say that's the most important thing. But really, when push comes to shove, how much money can we save? And I hate the word containment. They want to contain a conversation. Basically, it doesn't have to go to an agent. It's finding the balance between those two things. And unfortunately, quite often once we get involved with a customer, we find that there are really fundamental holes in their system that need to be plugged. That we can't overcome. For example, a perfect example is in my previous company, Smart Action, which focused on automating phone calls, whereas AIGO, our focus is on chat. Unfortunately, we found that a very large number of corporations simply didn't have the mechanisms to transfer the information that our IVR with a brain got, to transfer that to an operator. And I mean, to me, it's still incomprehensible that companies that come to us and, say we want to improve customer service, that they didn't put the effort in to transfer that. And it wasn't even a matter of cost, because we actually were so keen on providing that customer experience that we said, we'll provide the technology to you free of charge. We want whatever we've gathered in our IVR conversation, we want that to go to the live agent, so they don't have to. And we still had a sizable number of customers that just had so much inertia or whatever, that it wasn't enough of a priority. And I find that really frustrating, when companies want to do the simple things, relatively simple things, to improve customer experience. But as far as obviously people engaging with us come to us because they're frustrated with what, dumb chatbots, the limitations of dumb chatbots. So we're stepping up to improve their customer service.
It's funny. I had an experience just a couple of weeks ago. I had a doctor's appointment. This doctor I've been going to for 5 or 6 years, and he was out, and there was another doctor that was taking over for him that day. And I had not met this doctor before. And one of the first things he said to me is, "So are you spending a lot of time at the lake with your boat?" And, he just started chatting with me about stuff that I was like, how do you know this? And it's because the previous doctor took really good notes and transferred that information. And what that did was build instant trust, and
yes.
like, A, they care enough to write down those kinds of things, but B, it just made me trust that they really are in this for me and that they took the time to transfer that information. So being able to do the same, through digital means it's the same result. You just have that built-in trust, like, oh, they really don't want me to have to repeat my story 3 times, and so I think that's one of the things I love most about the work that you're doing, and the level of frustration that you're saving the world by being able to figure this out is definitely significant.
Yeah, that's a great story. And in fact, often people still think of automation as being inferior to talking to a live agent. But if it's within the capabilities of the system, actually it's a much better experience, because there's no wait time. And I mean, you can't always staff a call center, above 100%, to keep it under 100%. An agent will always be immediately available. Very few companies can afford to do that. You have peak periods. So with automation, you have, immediate response. You have, massive scaling and instantaneous scaling you can achieve. It's 24/7. That's, again, a lot of companies can't really justify having 24/7. But even more importantly, AIGO, intelligent chatbot, can have photographic memory, essentially, full memory of know everything that is known about the customer that can help to deal with whatever service request there is. So it's almost like having a dedicated concierge service, of somebody who remembers what your previous interaction is, which in a live situation, you can't ever get that. I mean, you're not likely to get back through to the same person on the call center. And even if you were, they wouldn't remember the previous call. So with automation, you can actually achieve a much better service, much quicker, taking into account the history. And then, of course, a very consistent experience, because that's another thing that call centers struggle with, is training everyone to the same level of quality. Typically it's, some kind of a bell curve or something, where you have, some very, very few really good agents, and, most of them aren't that great.
I love this because you're speaking to, of course, with the right technology, how you can create an excellent experience for the customer. That's, it's the hyper-personalization and that memory that really matters, so it gets to the heart of our show, really knowing your customer. It's really remembering your customer might be a whole nother episode, that we have to do. Right. But, I've got a question. I've worked a lot in the financial services industry, and I know that would be a target market for your application. Yeah. So one of the challenges that we saw happen quite regularly that would cause these massive influx into contact centers, chat, email, phone calls, would be when there's a data breach. And it could be, there's one a few years, I guess several years ago now, like Home Depot, their credit card got breached. Or you could take any of them that we've seen, Target, there's all the major brands have been through it. And this is not going away anytime soon. So how does your system adapt to that? Because what we found was day one, people are calling in about, was my card breached? Was my information breached? And what do I need to do? But over the next week or 2 weeks, the conversation evolves. Mm-hmm. And people are calling in about different things. Once they feel calm about their card, then it's, oh, wait, now I have to reconnect it to all the different, how do I reconnect it to this account and that account so it automatically pays? So how does your system potentially adapt to those sudden changes and then migrate with that kind of the cloud as the cloud moves across the horizon?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Now, with conventional chatbots, it's actually usually they are siloed. That we've spoken to some banks, and they have literally dozens of chatbots, separate chatbots that get implemented for different things. And these chatbots don't talk to each other. They don't have a common section, common brain or anything. They don't have a brain. But with our approach, it's essentially that, we were talking about the 3 layers, that middle layer that has all of the information about the company that's relevant, business rules, it has APIs to the backend system and so on. And that section is used for all of the different types of conversations that you might have. Now, what that allows us to do is to very easily and quickly add functionality to the system, because you already have that corporate brain, as it were, in your chat infrastructure that's already in place. So to add another. To add some functionality in terms of, saying, were you breached or not, and how you answer that question. And as you say, as it evolves over the days, it's actually very easy for our system to add that functionality. Often it's, in fact, some of the things we can teach the system in natural language even, to teach it another skill. So that's one of the other advantages, that it can, you can get the system adapting to emerging requirements. It's really getting that initial integration going. That's the biggest job. Now, we also, in terms of data security, I think people are increasingly nervous about SaaS, the SaaS model. We've just seen a couple of really nasty incidents. So our system is actually deployed behind the customer's firewall. It's not a SaaS application. So we provide the technology, the chatbot brain technology, to our customers, that they integrate it into their existing infrastructure. Now, that may still be in many cases, it's still a cloud service, but it's either their own private cloud or a cloud that they're already securing. They know how to secure. So our chatbot gets implemented behind their firewall, basically, and that's sort of, at least we're not adding to the potential holes that you can have.
Peter, clearly you're a visionary. What does the future look like for you and for AIGO?
Well, we want everybody to have intelligent conversations, with AI. We think it's high time that people reject these dumb chatbots. It's really not necessary, and it's a little bit of an accident of history that people actually are okay with that, is because, as I mentioned earlier, the big companies have a lot of data. They have a lot of computing power. So that's a hammer they've got. So everything looks like a nail. They say, oh yeah, we can provide a chatbot with this statistical big data technology. But it's the exact opposite of what you want. It's not the quantity of data, it's the quality of data, but because these big companies are driving it, the Googles, Amazons, and, IBM, they're driving it. That's a technology that they have and know, and basically that's what's provided. But I think enterprise and end users should not put up with that. There is a better solution available, and that's really what I see the future is. That we will insist that every chatbot has a brain. Every IVR has a brain, and going out further. This is kind of a separate topic now, is let's look at things like Siri and Alexa and, the sort of personal assistants that are there. Again, do we ultimately want these dumb assistants that are owned by a mega corporation really fulfilling, their agenda rather than the user's agenda? Or do we want personal assistants that you own, that you control, and that are really hyper-personalized to you and are intelligent? So we see ultimately intelligent chatbots being available to individuals to help them in their lives, but that they own it, they control it, and it's theirs. We actually call that a personal assistant. In fact, it should be a personal assistant because of three different meanings of the word personal. Personal, that you own it, personal, that it's personalized, customized to you, and personal, that the information it has is private and you'll only share it with the people you want to share it with. So that's the future I see, that, people will insist on having these intelligent personal assistants, and that they have more and more control over them as well.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And I'm glad Betsy asked the question, because I wanted to ask that question too. And just knowing where your technology can go, it seems to be a logical step to move away from basically for individuals to be able to plug into a company's chatbot with, as you said, their own personal assistant, rather than having to start from scratch every single time. Right. And so it's an interesting and compelling thing to think about. So we have covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't specifically chatted about yet?
Well, there are lots of things we can talk about, but our focus here really is on, quality service to customers and how we achieve that. And, this is what we breathe and live, we love doing it. As much as I like the technical aspects and understanding intelligence and building intelligent systems, to me, it's nothing if it can't be implemented in the real world and actually, help people. And for our enterprise customers, it's helping them in two ways, offering a much better service to their customers and saving them a ton of money, at the same time. And so, that's a real win, and really excited to be doing what we're doing, and just hope that more people find out about what's possible today, and that they will, start insisting on having intelligence in their conversational AI.
Great, Peter. Thank you so much. What's something that our listeners and Tony's network and my network can do to support your efforts moving forward?
Well, thanks for asking. Spread the word, and let us know if you have a company that could benefit from an intelligent chatbot. Just contact us or spread the word. Let more people know that you don't have to put up with dumb chatbots anymore.
Okay, absolutely. And we will put your contact information, et cetera, in the show notes as well. One of the things that we like to do on our show is to give our guests an opportunity to give a shout out to a charitable organization or some sort of organization that's doing good in the world, because, we all need more of that, right? So is there an organization that you'd like to tell us about and that we can support by virtue of spreading the word?
Yes, certainly. I mean, there are many worthwhile charities, but the one I particularly like is Institute for Justice, that maybe not as many people know about. And it really fights for sort of the common man injustices, through, government regulation, overreach, or, eminent domain abuses, where big corporations often will use, or big organizations will use government or their power to really do injustice to individuals. And I think they're doing a terrific job.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Well, we are, of course, I know Tony's been geeking out on the technology. He's a little more tech focused than I am, but I know we've both enjoyed this conversation so much, and we'll definitely be following to watch where this goes, because I honestly believe there's not a person on the planet that won't benefit from the work you're doing. So we know you're very busy. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest on our show, and we look forward to seeing what you bring to the world in the future.
Well, thank you so much. This was fun. Thanks for having me. And I also look forward to having 7 billion people have intelligent AIs, personal assistants.
Absolutely.
That's going to be an awesome world.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. All right. Thanks, Peter. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Betsy, this interview with Peter was phenomenal. I think the biggest takeaway I have is this distinction between general AI and narrow AI, and the real value it can bring to the customer experience, but also to the world as a whole. I mean, it's just, this is so much bigger. We talked about it in the context of customer experience, but it's so much bigger. It's the human experience and what can happen as general AI spreads out there and as it's applied in so many unique and different ways.
Yeah. And you know what it brought to mind for me is when you and I were writing the book and we were talking about human experience, not just customer experience, but the human experience, yet how that approach can also be technological, or, you doing exactly what he's doing with AI. But the idea that everybody can learn from what they're doing at AIGO to really provide that great human experience. And I'm with you. I mean, I hate to admit how frustrated I get when I've had a bad situation with customer service or tech support. And so I think, I'm a calm, reasonable person. And if I can get that frustrated, just imagine the energy level of the world, how much better it'll be when things are a lot more seamless.
Well, as a side note, this year, one of my, I don't want to call it a resolution, one of my practices I put into place is eliminating annoyances. And it's fascinating because what I have discovered is it's not just like thinking positive, it's actually getting rid of those things that are draining my energy and my emotions and causing me to focus and pay attention to the things I don't feel good about and the unpleasant things of life. And by eliminating them, it really has changed who I am. It changed how I look at things. I find joy in the little things in a much different way than I did before. And I bring that into this conversation because if you really look at the literally billions of hours that are spent every year waiting in lines, dealing with customer service issues, being frustrated, then going, as you said, calling your sister and having a conversation about how bad that was, right? We all do it. We waste our life. We only have 70, 80 years, whatever that is on this earth. And if we waste years of it accumulated over time on unpleasant experiences dealing with things as a customer, I think that's a real shame. I think that's a real injustice, to put it bluntly. And that's one of the reasons I work so hard in a space, because I absolutely believe we ought to be living every moment of our life the best way possible. So I'll step off my soapbox now, but that's my passion here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And it just points to the bigger why. Like I love when companies have that bigger mission that definitely is a positive impact in the world. Because if you looked at this on the surface and just thought, oh, it's an AI company, you don't get to that bigger why and what it means for the world. And so I love what he's doing. And he's clearly passionate about it. He wants to obviously have a big impact on the world. So really enjoyed this conversation. Tony, thank you again. It's always a pleasure having these conversations with you. And I just feel so fortunate to get to do this with all these really interesting guests and to get to do this with you. And just, we're going to keep doing this. So thank you to our listeners who are supportive and keep tuning in. We really, really appreciate it. So until the next time, we will see you on the Really Know Your Customer podcast. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Really Know Your Customer. We hope you gained a lot of value from being here today. If you want to learn more about the work Betsy and Tony do to help their clients thrive, visit Betsy at thecongruitygroup.com and Tony at tonybodo.com. See you next time on the Really Know Your Customer show.